Okay, hello everyone, welcome. Believe it or not, this is the preparation for assessment 1. So I know it's early, I know we're only into week 2, but I just think if you're anything like me, I like to have all the details that I can get my hands on and just to help me prepare. And I know that many of you have joined groups already, which is terrific. So this is a pre-flipped Collaborate. I will go through the assessment details. And I have here a suggested time to catch up, perhaps for an open question and answer session for next Monday at 7:30, so that if you have any questions or if you're still not sure of something, you can get on live and we can work through some of those sticky bits then. And it also gives you a chance to, once you've had a listen to this and you've had a discussion with your group and made a start, that you can ask some questions. So often you don't have questions until you actually get into the nitty-gritty, and then it's like, oh, I didn't really think of this. So please, you can still go ahead and post on the question and answer section, and then we can get together on Monday at 7:30. So just a few of the details. We've got the assignment 1A, which is a team analysis. The word limit is 1,000 words, give or take 10% either side, 20%, and it's due on 5 p.m. Monday the 12th of December, which is week 6. Now I know that my screen's hiding some of the text. I will post this PowerPoint for you to access if you need it, so that you haven't missed anything. Alright, so we'll move on. And yeah, some of the words will be cut off, but that's okay, you can see that too. I'm going to flick in and out of screens just to show you a few things as we go, and this information has come directly from the assignment section, so there's nothing new here unless I've added something. So all this information is there for you to access. It's just a straight cut and paste. So the key focus for the unit is the consideration of how literacy can be incorporated into a range of curriculum areas. And as we had a look at in week 1, your perception of what literacy is, and then in week 2 we have a look at literacy as a general capability. So that's sort of how it's sort of fitting into context. And you're demonstrating your understanding of literacy across the curriculum by responding to a scenario, which we'll look at in the next couple of slides, and related to science education. So this is the first of 2-part assignment. So we're looking at the group task first, which is a team analysis 1A, and then you then prepare a presentation, which is assessment or assignment 1B, where you will look at the implementation of the strategies that you come up with as a team. So I guess in context, the first part of the assignment, part A, is the what, and then the part B is the how and the why. So we're looking at your ability to demonstrate that you meet the criteria for the following unit learning outcomes, which is to critically analyse the teaching of literacy across the curriculum, and I've underlined critically analyse, and differentiate between formal and informal literacy learning and thinking. So there are 2 main areas that we'll be focusing on for this assessment. So here's the case study, and this once again is a straight cut and paste, and I know it's quite wordy to look at, so I apologise for that. However, I will break it down just a little bit for you, and yeah, because sometimes it helps if you can just get a little bit more context. So we've got Sean, who is the team leader of the grade 3 area, and he's a teacher of the grade 3-4 class. He's based at a low socioeconomic school with a high population of ESL and Indigenous students. So if you're thinking about the cohort or the SES background, that probably gives you a little bit more information about what sorts of things the learners are going to need. And that then links to student diversity and student access. So the team have prepared a science inquiry unit for the term, so they've probably spent a day or so in a planning day preparing this term's work and linking that to their curriculum expectations. So the topic is chemical science, which is a change of state between solid and liquid, which can be caused by adding or removing heat. So I'm just going to drop my screen here and pop over to the internet just to show you the focus. So I've clicked on the strand, and that's just taken me to what this is, and we've got the elaborations, and we've got the access to Scootle, so you can find some resources in there should you need it. And these are the two areas for literacy as general capability. So exploring how changes from solid liquid and to a solid can help us recycle materials, and predicting the effect on different materials. So if we just click into this, and you'll be doing this week in week 2, here are the elaborations. So literacy, the particular elements of literacy addressed by this elaboration are comprehending text through listening, reading and viewing, and word knowledge, understanding, learning vocabulary. And the learning materials in the next couple of weeks are going to show you how these things can be really supported, especially for the learners that are needing that context, like the ones in this scenario. So being able to navigate, read and view learning area texts, interpret and analyse learning area texts, and understand learning area vocabulary, which then links to that chemical science. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. And then, yep, the Scootle link as well will take you into that section. So just going to go back up to our PowerPoint. All right, so they've set this pre-test, and we haven't got a lot of information, but I would suggest that, you know, a pre-test would be something that could be a question and answer. It might be a piece of text with a comprehension where a few of the students have had to respond to a set of questions. It could have even been a plus-minus interesting task where they've had to respond to about what they know about this topic. And what's come out is that their understanding is quite limited. So Sean's concerned because the topic being covered is quite technical and requires students to understand terms, complex ideas about their environment, and also have knowledge of specific genres of writing. So the writing genres for this term's assessment are procedural, informative, and they are covered in week 6. So once again, for this assessment, you don't actually need to have an implementation plan of how this would get taught, but you do need to actually articulate what it is that needs to be covered and how you would support them. So that's something to have a look at. The unit plan that Sean has developed will not support his students as it stands. He's aware that he needs to go back and reassess his teaching strategies and the unit content. His school is also in the process of implementing the teaching and learning cycle, which is covered in week 7 in the modules. So you can have a look there just to see what that incorporates. So he's concerned that he won't be able to cover the required content in detail that would be expected. There's also a need for Sean to ensure that his students are engaged and that learning is differentiated across the class of 25 students. Sean works with his team and the other teachers are actually feeling the same way. So I would think then that their planning time is going to be about reviewing what it is that they can do now to make sure that these students are supported over the next part of the term. So that also is considered in planning. So we're looking at something like the Do-For questions, which are looked at in the unit as well. Let's drop the box down and show you the modules. All right, so this week we're looking at week 3, literacy demands and dimensions, which I'll show you shortly. Planning for literacy across the curriculum, the whole school approach. So planning for literacy, planning at the school level, the whole school curriculum design, professional learning communities, and then this one here, which is a classroom approach, which is in week 5. So this is where you'll go to sort of think about what it is that the teachers will do in their planning process to support these students. So please refer to that just to get a bit of an idea. Hopefully that will be helpful. Okay, so I'll pop back up our slide. Okay, and move on. So the assessment details. Step 1, if you haven't already, join a team in the Q&A assignment 1 section of the discussion page. If you just have a read through, you'll see that how the students have already done that, but it's just a matter of either joining a group that's looking for someone or posting that you need to find a team. And then I'll just come through and make sure that we're all covered and then add your completed team to the top of the list so that you know that you're on the way to go. And then you need to plan and organise your timeline and collaboration strategies. So whether that's email, wiki or Google Docs, and organisation of how that's going to happen, please ensure that all your team members can access that form of communication that you agree on. So that's essential. If you're deciding to go in one direction and one of those people doesn't or hasn't used Google Docs before, well, please make sure that they're up and able to communicate with you, because otherwise it's not going to work. Then when submitting your team response, you should contain the following sections: a title, cover page, and the names of your team members, please, because it really helps with the assessment process. I'll actually get all of the team's submissions up together as I assess them through. If the names aren't there, it just makes it a little bit tricky. So just add your team members' names. A discussion and analysis of this scenario and the issues raised within it, including the expected literacy skills and needs that are relevant to the scenario is detailed in the Australian curriculum. So refer to the Australian curriculum, consider literacy as a general capability and the learning continuum, which we look at this week. And then also consider literacy as a general capability, and there's a couple of other links there. And week 3 reading is making sense of literacy, so please refer to that for the demands. Analysis of the teaching of literacy across the curriculum, which defines and describes each of the 3 dimensions, operational, cultural and critical, and explain how these can be applied to the scenario. And then an explanation of formal and informal literacy learning, along with the discussion of how informal and formal literacy learning and thinking might be applied to the scenario, which clearly differentiates between the two. And many of your examples that you applied in week 1 were absolutely fantastic, so you're definitely on the right track. If you haven't had a chance to post, please go in and have a look at what the other team members have done, and it will give you a bit of an idea. So that will certainly set the scene. Okay. We also need a conclusion that summarises the key features of your response, a reference list, making sure that it's got APA format, and then any statements that you make throughout the assessment need to be supported by relevant literature. All sources must be appropriately referenced using APA conventions, including in-text citations and a reference list. So that's just come straight from the assessment details. In your appendix, please keep it brief. I don't need to know all the ins and outs, but if you could just put a screenshot of how you've undertaken your communication. If you want to, you could probably just pop a link in and I can have a look through. But yeah, just up to you, but no more than 2 pages, please. So the assignment criteria, so what it is that I'm looking for when I'm assessing you. Your ability to analyse the literacy demands across the curriculum. Your ability to differentiate formal and informal literacy learning and thinking, your evidence of collaboration and discussion, and then structure and written expression. So fairly straightforward, but once you get to the rubric, that's where the things start to flatten out. So we'll just have a look at what a pass requires. So a pass is looking at making sure that you've got demonstrated knowledge of the literacy dimensions and conventions and demands of literacy within the specific area. The work includes analysis of the scenario and the literacy demands as applicable to the scenario, demonstrating a developing capacity to identify literacy capabilities within science. Moves on to your ability to compare and describe and identify formal and informal literacy. That you have evidence of good collaboration. Strategies for improvement in context to the dimensions of literacy and formal and informal literacy have been identified and described. Use of literature, conventions, and APA referencing that are covered. Then if you have a look at the distinction, there is some quite strong differences here. So that there is depth in the level of understanding. So that the in-depth discussion is coming through. And then the third one, the critical insight. So, and that links back to the learning objectives and just making sure that you're critically analysing it at quite a high level. So the work develops an effective discourse that includes strategies and critical evaluation of the scenario, demonstrating a comprehensive capacity to evaluate the literacy capabilities within science. And then, yeah, there's those details there. So just to help you with that, I have popped in, and I've got the links below, how it is that you go about critically analysing. Okay, and that's just come from a website, but I just think it explains it really well and easily understood. So just if you're interested, refer to that one. I've also added a couple of other readings, so Young Learners Interpreting Literacy Practice, the Design Literacy Pedagogy, Scaffolding Democracy in the Classroom. The Making Sense of Literacy is the reading for week 3, so you'll get to know that one really well, but that's pretty important. And then that's pretty much it. And I hope to see you next week for the question and answer session. And please post any others in the Q&A section in the discussion board in the meantime. Hopefully that covers a few things. If not, just email me and